Good morning. Welcome to News Center Maine's Political Brew. Glad you could be with us, along with Democratic activist Betsy Sweet and former Yarmouth Town Councilor and State Senator Phil Harriman. It's good to see you both.
Nice
Good
to
morning.
see you too.
Morning.
Happy
Hi,
fall.
Betsy.
Plenty going on. Let's get right to it. This week, candidate for governor, Republican Paul LePage, says the Mills administration policies have allowed an increase in crime and the state's opioid crisis. Phil, I'll start with you. Is Governor Mills vulnerable on that issue?
Well, I think all incumbents are vulnerable on that issue. If you drive through the Deering Oak section of Portland, you see firsthand what the drug abuse issues are befolding people who need a helping hand. So whether it's free syringes or crack pipes or whatever is out there, if that's the public policy that's in play, the incumbents are going to be held accountable for it.
Yeah, I think this had nothing to do with drug policy. I think this was a dog whistle about, a racist dog whistle about to scare people about drugs. Because if it was about drug policy, right, the idea that we're gonna, the 9,000 people who overdosed who did not die because of Narcan, we're gonna charge them money for, I mean, it's just an absurd thing. And he was responsible in his administration for decimating the community health system, mental health system that leads people to that. So I think it was not about policy, I think it was a political thing. And it's shameful that he would take the lives of our friends and neighbors and use it as political fodder.
And was it surprising to you, Phil, that he would say he has always been against the use of the drug overdose reversal Narcan or naloxone? And he said in his statements, and listen, if they can pay for the drugs, they can pay for the Narcan too.
Yeah, you know, that's probably going to come back around and hit him again, but I think the bigger issue is that people consider what's going on at the border, where drugs are coming in and they're ending up on the streets here in Maine as well, is a concern. And so I think for the Governor LePage to say, we'll give you one free Narcan, and that should give you a warning that you got to get off this stuff. Next time it's on you. That's pretty tough duty.
And that's just, I'm sorry, that's just so not understanding of drug addiction as a health issue. We're not gonna arrest our way out of this problem. I don't think it had anything to do with drug policy. I think it was all about politics.
LePage found himself in a couple of unexpected dust-ups this past week. One, he criticized dairy farmers who were questioning him at an agricultural forum, telling them they're not productive enough and that their prices are too high. And the higher profile fight is with the Sportsmen's Alliance of Maine. LePage accused the group of pressuring him to promise to fund a project they support in exchange for a high grade in their voter guide. So LePage withdrew his survey answers and got an incomplete. Janet Mills received an A. Now, David Trahan and other leaders of SAM say their recording of the conversation shows LePage is wrong about this and has been picking an unnecessary fight. Let's face it, Betsy, the Sportsmen's Alliance is not hostile to Paul LePage. No. You know, they're about conservation, but also about gun rights, and tend to endorse more Republicans than Democrats. What's happening here?
Well, I think what we're finding out is that there is no Paul LePage 2.0, right? I think Paul LePage is Paul LePage. And, you know, if you catch him on the wrong day or you trigger something for him, he just goes. And so I think, you know, they've been trying to make him something else. And I think it's the same Paul LePage we had, you know, for 8 years. And the fact that he is picking fights with his potential allies, you know, I think they've just, I don't know if it means that they're desperate or they're giving up, but, you know, I think it's certainly not something that says to people, oh yeah, we have a whole new Paul LePage, it's going to be a new day, a new era. That's clearly not the case.
Is this smart politics, Phil?
I actually think it is smart politics for Paul LePage. I don't see these comments as creating an outrage that we've seen in the past. I see it as Paul LePage telling his constituents, and as you rightly point out, one's likely to be more favorable to him. He's willing to tell them what they need to know, not what they want to hear. And he's saying to them, whether you're a dairy farmer, gee, your prices in Maine compared to in Vermont are higher. What do we got to do to become more efficient? Same with the Sportsmen's Alliance. Hey, we got a budget that has all these competing requests. I'm listening to what you have to say, but I'm not going to commit now before I actually see a budget. And he's willing to say that before the election. I think that's refreshing.
But what he's not willing to do is have a conversation. You know, you can say, hey, we have a problem with milk prices, let's talk about it. What he does is he gives out his own vindictive thing that says, you know, a judgment and a mean thing that he says, and that's how he does it. That's not a conversation, that's not a statesman, that's not a governor.
The three candidates for Congress in Maine's 2nd District were together for a News Center Maine Voice of the Voter Forum this past week, and it's their only scheduled joint appearance of the campaign. Phil, you watched this. Did anybody score some points that may help them come November 8th?
I think in a debate like this, which is televised statewide, you succeed if you do no harm. Nobody did any harm to themselves. I would say in general, Jared Golden to me appeared to be on the defensive. He had a lot of explaining to do, if you will, in terms of the various votes that he's
As the incumbent, that's typical.
Sure,
Okay.
yeah. And I thought Bruce Poliquin, compared to the last campaign, actually answered your questions, and that was refreshing in and of itself. And Tiffany Bond, a very elegant, candidate, but really didn't convince me why I should vote for her.
Betsy?
Yeah, well, he answered all the questions except for right to choose. He was not very forthcoming on his position on choice.
He came as close as he has to saying he would leave it to the states, not vote for a national ban. That's for what that's worth.
Yeah, it didn't quite go there. But I thought Tiffany actually did a great job. I wish she would have been stronger in saying, you know what, fly on both your houses. Like, if you are sick of the system, I'm your no-risk candidate, because in ranked choice voting, you can vote for me, and if I don't make it, it'll go to either one of these guys. But, I think we know both of these candidates. I think it's a problem with having two candidates that we know. They've both been in office. They've both been around. So I don't think I think no one did any harm and no one did any good.
A couple of new polls this past week put Janet Mills up by double digits in her race against Paul LePage. She's up 12 points in an Emerson College poll, 14 in one from the University of New Hampshire Survey Center. Both of these outfits have pretty good track records. Betsy, do you have faith in these numbers?
I'd say polls schmoles. I just think, I think polling is getting less and less accurate. Less and less people respond to them. Fewer people, they get skewed no matter how much they try. And, we see poll after poll. The Susan Collins race in Kansas just recently, right? They called that choice question too close to call, and they won by, over 20 points. So I think they're dangerous. I think this poll is particularly dangerous because I think it makes Mills supporters complacent. People who are not say I'll vote for it, but I'm not excited. They're like, oh, good, I don't have to do that. And I think it energizes LePage voters. The internal tracking polls that I've heard of show this race almost too close to call.
Phil?
Well, I think the polls give you a snapshot in time. It's not like they're predicting the end of the movie. They're telling you at this part of the movie, here's the picture that you're looking at. So I agree with Betsy that while the poll may not be, calibrated to the small percentage point, but probably which way the wind is blowing.
But they are consistent in giving
Yes.
a big
Yeah.
lead, and one of the questions is, do Republicans get under-surveyed in these? Or do they just withhold or not say what they're really thinking?
Yeah.
Because it seems to kind of go this way, as it did in the Collins-Gideon race a couple years ago.
Right, and Paul LePage will tell you in the last race that he won, he was in the polling behind, and he got more votes at the time than any governor in history.
Well, we'll see how it comes out when
Schmaltz.
the real poll on November 8th. The bipartisan effort to reform the Electoral Count Act got a boost when Mitch McConnell announced his support for it. That's the Senate Minority Leader. Chuck Schumer is on board now as well. Senator Susan Collins has been leading the charge on this. The bill would clarify the limited role played by the Vice President and raise the bar for members of Congress and the Senate to object to electoral count slates. Phil, is this going to get done?
It appears as though it's going to get done in the Senate. It's going to be interesting to see if it can go through reconciliation with the House. But when Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell agree on anything, that's a good day.
Betsy?
Yeah, I agree. I've become cynical, I will say, so I'm not sure that they really believe it. But I think that even Mitch McConnell thought that the attack on Pence and the idea that the vice president could overturn it, I think even that was too far for him. So I'm hoping this will go through.
And clearly this bill came in response to the effort to overturn the 2020 presidential election, and the widespread unproven claims of fraud also sparked a bill sponsored by Maine Senator Angus King to protect election workers and toughen penalties for anyone interfering with their work. It seems sad to say so, but is this necessary?
Very sadly, I think it is very necessary. If you talk to election clerks around the state and around the country, they are getting death threats. They are getting, hateful mail. They are, it's unbelievable that people are threatening the people whose job it is. These people have so much integrity, and all our local town clerks, right? They're very big on, their job that they do. Mm-hmm. So I think it is very necessary, and I think it's a very sad day in democracy that it is so necessary.
It's hard for me to understand, at least in the state of Maine, and Betsy's right, every town clerk that I've ever had an encounter with, they're proud of what they do and they want it done the right way. They don't want to have a recount and see that they fumbled it, so to speak. So I'm not sure of the need for this in Maine, but clearly in other jurisdictions around the country, there's been a lot of controversy about how these elections are run.
And a lot of aggression against the people running them.
A lot of aggression against the accountants.
Yeah.
You know?
The CEO of a defense contractor based in Hawaii has pleaded guilty to illegally funneling more than $200,000 to the Senator Susan Collins 2020 campaign and a PAC that supported her reelection. Collins had helped Navitech land an $8 million Navy contract when he had an office in Maine. Phil, what's your takeaway from this?
Well, I want to believe that Susan Collins had no knowledge of this information, and therefore tying her to this breaking of the law, I think, is unfair to Senator Collins. And clearly the guy has pled guilty, and he should serve his time.
Does it tell us something deeper about the system, Betsy?
gonna say,
I have a feeling where we're going here.
You'd be disappointed in me if I didn't, right? I mean, this is exactly the problem. And of course, she may not have known about this thing, but of course they understand. And if you go on the other side in those corporate boardrooms, they don't talk about political contributions. They talk about political investments. Who are we going to invest in who's going to give us the best return on our money? This was a good return on their money, and it's not just Susan Collins, but it is a spotlight again on the destructive and horrific impact of money in politics.
Let's wrap up with our winners and losers in politics this week. And Phil, we'll start with you.
This week, my loser is the people surrounding the president. We look to the president as the leader of the free world, and there's clearly an indication that his health may not be what it should be, and I'm hoping that that becomes more of a focus. My winner this week are the men and women who are working the electrical lines up in Newfoundland and down in Florida. They're from up and down the coast helping others get their power back.
Betsy?
Well, we have the same winner. I absolutely, all the volunteers and all paid and unpaid people who are helping people in Florida and Newfoundland and all the things from climate change that we're seeing. My loser this week is all the Republican senators who voted against the Financial Disclosure Act, which said all contributions to all political efforts will be made public. They voted against that. And what the effect of that is, which is the incredible number of negative ads we're seeing. I still want to campaigns in which the only thing they can do is talk about what they're going to do and never say a word about the other person.
You're such a dreamer.
I am a dreamer, but I'm not the only one.
It's a good dream.
But I'm not the only one.
Betsy Sweet, Phil Harriman, thanks for being with us.
You're welcome.
Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time. News Center Maine is back after this.
Thanks.